He was sent to death row in San Quentin as a child rapist. Do you understand what that means? They stole his life.
The attorneys said today they feel prosecutors and cops may have withheld the medical records and other evidence intentionally. They also brought up Kern's history of child molestation convictions from the 1980s that were almost all overturned by the Supreme Court decades later.
All right, welcome to Convoluted Part 2 about Vicente Benavides. And I'm Jesse Asher. Today we are going to be continuing the story of exoneree Vicente Benavides. And we left off in April 20th of 1993 when Vicente was convicted for first-degree murder, rape, sodomy, and lewd conduct, inflicting serious injuries, and they imposed the death penalty. So in 2005, after spending 12 years in prison, the California Supreme Court upheld his conviction. And 14 years after his conviction, in 2007, Vicente's attorney filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. And I'm just going to quote from the Cornell Law School the definition of habeas corpus. Latin for that you have the body. In the U.S. system, federal courts can use the writ of habeas corpus to determine if a state's detention of a prisoner is valid. A writ of habeas corpus is used to bring a prisoner or other detainee before the court to determine if the person's imprisonment or detention is lawful. A habeas petition proceeds as a civil action against the state agent who holds the defendant in custody. It can also be used to examine any extradition processes used, the amount of bail, and the jurisdiction of the court. So their argument was essentially that the conviction was based on false medical testimony. The police and prosecution withheld evidence, and the prosecution made improper arrangement or arguments. Apparently, both of his attorneys had been disbarred or suspended as well throughout these years, and the petition that was filed cited the failure of his attorneys to provide adequate defense. Now, although the main focus of the petition was on the medical testimony, Vicente is developmentally disabled and has the mental capacity equivalent of a 7-year-old, and the defense failed to bring this to attention at trial. So the petition said, quote, virtually every medical observation and conclusion that the prosecution presented from the cause of death to the evidence of rape and sodomy was manufactured and false. And I'm going to quote something else from the National Registry of Exonerations. The jury did not learn or know that the pathologist's cause of death, anal penetration that severed her pancreas, is medically impossible. And the jury did not know that the numerous medical personnel who administered Consuelo's care immediately upon her arrival at the hospital emphatically deny that she had such injuries. Indeed, the jury did not hear that the injuries used to support the charges resulted not from criminal conduct, but rather from invasive and sustained medical efforts to address Consuelo's increasingly deteriorating medical condition. And Dr. Dibshit, he was the only medical expert to not recant years later. And I'm not going to dive into it too much, but it does seem that Dipshit had a bit of a history of being terminated from multiple medical examiner offices, which is not funny, but he just seems like a piece of shit. He's the only one that didn't recant. Anyway, it's not about my opinion. The petition also stated that the initial x-rays of Consuelo revealed no rib fractures, but the report of the x-rays was amended to state that the fractures were visible after detectives claimed to have seen fractures in the x-rays. Because, you know, detectives are medical experts, and the police report documenting that change was not disclosed to the defense. The defense's two experts weren't provided with all the medical evidence, and what they did get, or what they did receive, came too late to fully inform their testimony. Now, another major issue with the lab reports, because this case is ridiculous, the lab reports from that criminalist, Jana Spencer, she said that there was no evidence of Consuelo being outside. Well, the lab report documented that not only was plant material found on her sweatshirt, there was also dirt and blood on her shoe. And according to the National Registry of Exonerations, the petition stated that Christina had been removed by the State Child Protective Services and was threatened during multiple interviews with social workers and detectives that she wouldn't go home until she provided testimony that was in favor of the state. Prosecution also failed to disclose that the state had paid benefits to the family members that took in Christina, and both of them had testified at the sentencing hearing. Estella was apparently also threatened by the prosecution that she would never get custody of Christina if she continued to show support for Vicente's innocence. And according to the petition, she ultimately did testify falsely. And I might as well mention another failure of the prosecution while we're mentioning all these failures, when they failed to disclose that Dr. Diamond examined Christina and determined she had never been molested. So the Supreme Court ordered the prosecution to respond, and in August 2010 they filed that response conceding that the convictions were based on false medical evidence. But they of course argued that even though the charges relating to sexual assault should be dismissed, Vicente's first-degree murder conviction should at least be reduced to second-degree murder. And in March of 2018, the California Supreme Court vacated all the convictions against Vicente Benavides. So the court concluded that the injuries to Consuelo were caused by numerous medical interventions and body-wide swelling. Two doctors that treated Consuelo at UCLA, they reviewed the medical records and stated that anal penetration could not have been the cause of death because the organs between the anus and upper abdomen were not injured. The court then said, and this is from the National Registry of Exonerations, quote, Dr. Rick Harrison, the physician in charge of Consuelo's care at UCLA, believed the cause of death given by Dr. Dibden was anatomically impossible. Dr. Diamond, he recanted, saying, it is now my opinion to a high degree of medical certainty that Consuelo was not raped or sodomized. And according to KGET News, Dr. Diamond said in a sworn statement to the Supreme Court that he was so disturbed by the new evidence that he sent it to one of the foremost experts in child abuse, Dr. Nat Baumer, we going more German? He claimed that he had not been given all of Consuelo's medical records before testifying. And on April 19th, 2018, Vicente Benavides was released from prison. He then filed a lawsuit about a year later against Kern County. I didn't see any results about how that lawsuit is going currently. It is still relatively new. I know these things can take a while sometimes, so I'm hoping that I can find out that information soon. I'm hoping he wins the lawsuit, gets some, compensation or whatever, gets taken care of a little bit for this injustice that was just resulted in not only being locked away for years, but being locked away for probably the worst crime that you could think of. And a little side note here, according to the Death Penalty Information Center, Vicente is the 162nd person and 5th foreign national exonerated from a U.S. death row since 1973, and the 4th person exonerated from California's death row since 1980. And so that's it. That's the end of this saga, and I'm just going to leave off with something that Vicente Benavides said that I got from the LA Times. And it was translated by a Spanish interpreter. Up until the present, I continue suffering from the injustice that I lived through and the pain that I must carry with me the rest of my life. Thank you guys for watching to the end of this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, share the story about Vicente Benavides, and stay tuned for more Convoluted episodes. More importantly, check out the Habeas Corpus Resource Center, which is located in San Francisco, and they only work in California, but you could still check them out, read about them, and see if you can volunteer, help out at all if you are in that area. I'll have all those websites linked below, and of course make sure to check out the National Registry of Exonerations, which I will also link below. Thank you guys for making it to the end of this video, and stay tuned for more. I'm out.